Hey Shooby Doodlers, how are you doing? Well look, I've got this fabulous apple tree just outside my studio, and there's one up there that I want, so I've got this apple catching thing, and that is one beautiful looking apple with bits all over it. Let's go and draw it. So here we have the apple, and let's see what is going on here. We've actually got two lights. There's one directly above, creating a shadow down below. That's the really dark bit. And then we've got a side lamp coming in at this angle. You can see the shine on there from that lamp. And that's creating this shadow over here. As to what shape this is, let's kind of investigate that a little bit more. Okay, here we have the apple, and I'm going to draw a circle, and then we can move that over the apple, and you can see there's just a tiny little bit of a skim taken off the bottom there, and then we got this kind of curve around the top there. Get that curve in there, and then we want another one that's about there like that. And then here we've got a kind of a line there that kind of comes slightly curved, and then that was, this is the kind of shape that we've kind of got going on here. Then what about this shadow? That's more like that, isn't it? Something, and it's just slightly round at an angle. So I will put these shapes on my Patreon page, so you can have this image and remove the apple as well. You have that image both on my Patreon page to help you with drawing this image. Well, I've done a little kind of sketch here just to kind of work it out. And in fact, look, there's this interesting thing here, is this trying to get the kind of the curves of what's going on here. So you've got the curves coming around here, but then they've also got the curves that are coming down into the pit, or whatever you call it, of the apple there. So it's kind of working those little bits out as well. And I'll stick this one on, and I'll scan this and I'll put this on Patreon too. So you get so much more on Patreon. And here's a quick little sketch I did just to get in the mood. Now I'm going to draw this in my sketchbook. If you haven't seen this, this is my Hereford sketchbook. Click up here to see the link, go and watch that. And I'm going to do this in my sketchbook. So I'm going to start encouraging you to do work in sketchbooks, because they're so good. You can kind of go back and see what you've been doing and see how you improve. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by drawing a circle, and I know everyone's going to ask, what is this sketchbook? This is a Seawhite watercolor sketchbook. They've only brought them out quite recently. I love Seawhite because they're great quality and very, very reasonable. I got links to Seawhite stuff down below, and all the pens and pencils I have are all linked down below. So here we have a circle, and we need to kind of take a fraction off the bottom and then come down about there, and then draw an angle going across like that, and then we want to kind of come off that kind of at a tangent, coming around off like that, and coming up there and coming into the curve around about there, and that gives us the thing that we're after. And then we want to come down about here, and it's this kind of little handlebar kind of shape, and then the stalk is going to be kind of like that. Now I'm going to rub out some of this rubbish up at the top here. So I'm not doing ink today. Oh, and I'll get that there. So I'm not doing pen and ink today. I'm going to do this in pencil. So that's going to go kind of something like that, I think. I'm just going to make that a little bit higher like that. There we go. And then that stalk is much thinner, isn't it? Much more flexible, and it's kind of coming around like that. Good. And then I think we're going to kind of want to have that. I'm just going to put a little vague guide for the shadow in down there. So I'm using my very cheap Cotman set, and basically I kind of feel there's just this kind of yellow underneath the whole thing. So I'm going to go all the way around, except around about here. I've gone over the line. And so I'm using a water brush here. So now I'm cleaning the brush. Let me show you. I'm cleaning the brush up and sprinkling water all over the page. And I'm just kind of letting wet, clean water go there so that that just stays nice and clean and bright there. And I'm using that kind of yellow as a kind of an undercoat. And I'll get a bit of ochre. And I think we're going to want some kind of ochre in around about here. So I'm just going to bring that out. And again, remember, so we've got this kind of radiating pattern out like that we need to be working with. It's kind of like carpentry, you know, you really want to work with the grain. So here we're kind of working with the pattern. And then again here we got a bit coming out kind of that kind of way, and it's coming kind of down there as well. I'm going to add a little bit of green to this now as well. So we've got a kind of bit of hint of greenness down there. And while it's still wet, I'm just going to allow that to kind of, I'm just kind of cleaning the brush, and I'm just going to kind of pull that green into that ochre that I put there. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I'm going to need to think about this red. So I think we've got kind of an orange, slightly orangey red. So I'm having a bit of cadmium yellow there. I think it's cadmium yellow, and a bit of scarlet. And I'm going to have a bit of this. I can't remember the name of it. I should know, shouldn't I? And so right down here, I'm not going to paint all the way down to the edge. So I'm going to kind of do some of this there like that. And then I'm going to clean the brush. And I need this to be a bit cleaner. So you squeeze the brush. And then I'm coming around there. I think that's probably a bit too dark even so. So what you have is underneath here, you've got this ambient light, which is from the paper, which is reflected up underneath the apple. And so what I'm going to do is kind of work with that shape again. And work up this way like that. But around here, this is actually right to the edge. So I'm going to bring that around like that. So like I say, it's kind of working with this sort of shape of the what do we call it? I'm thinking of it like a pumpkin, and I'm kind of really kind of working with that, and there's hardly any around there, and this is sort of coming up here, and we've got little kind of streaks around there, and then we have quite a lot around this side coming up here. So what can I tell you? I know people always want to know. Someone will always say, "What? Go on, what is that brush?" So this is a Pentel Aquash water brush. You can get all sorts of different water brushes. So many people make them now. I think Pentel were pretty much the first. And so you have the water is in the handle, and it kind of flows down into the brush, which is slightly different to painting with a normal brush. And normally you're kind of loading. You load a load of colour onto the brush, and then it kind of keeps going at that same level. Whereas here, because you've got this water coming down all the time, it's getting paler and paler the more you paint. Does that make sense? The more you paint, the more the water comes down, and the more the paint gets thinned, basically, with the water. So now again I'm doing this kind of following the pattern of the sort of like it's like longitude, isn't it? It's like the longitude on a globe, basically, is what I'm following here, all these bits, and I'm just looking and looking and looking, and I think here we got, so it's wet at the moment, so I'm kind of painting wet on wet, and that allows things to sort of blend in a kind of smoothish sort of way. And again here you see I want this to be kind of pale down here, but it needs to kind of blend in at the same time. And so if I carry on like that, so it needs to be quite pale down there, and then look, I've gone over there. I'm getting a clean piece of kitchen towel now. You always want a piece of kitchen towel or something. I find when I go out and about sketching, and if I've gone to a restaurant or a cafe or something, and they give you McDonald's, they give you, you know, napkins, paper napkins, and so I'm always stuffing them in my pocket, and so I sort of use McDonald's paper napkins. I use anything like this. So now I want a much darker kind of red, and this wants to sort of come up around here. It's quite green. So this is wanting to be really quite dark red here, intensely dark, like that. And then how's it looking? And then I want it to be quite dark here too. But again, I'm wanting to do this kind of fading thing. So I'm squeezing the brush slightly onto the paper. I've just cleaned and sorted out these brushes today, and this is kind of being a bit leaky, this one. It's being very leaky. It's just done an enormous blodge there. I might change. I got a different one here, see if this one's better. Oh, that's quite free-flowing too. I kind of really clean them up there. Sometimes they clog, and I've been so used to working with clogged ones, I've forgotten how to operate with one that doesn't clog. Okay, so I'm doing that there. And then up on the top here, I think this needs to be quite dark around here too, and we want to get around there. We want a few little darker bits around there. And now I'm getting some pretty intensely almost straight paint into there. I know when I do watercolor, I always have to remind newbies, basically. Well, I probably have to remind the people who've been following me a long time about watercolor, and that it's different to painting like with oils and acrylics. And many people think, you know, watercolors, you know, for kids, and that's how you start or something. Yeah, I think watercolor is probably much harder than, much more difficult, much more technical than working in oil and acrylic. You have to kind of plan ahead quite a lot. So with paint, you get a splodge of paint, stick it on there. The paper could be black, it doesn't matter what colour is underneath, you're going to get that splodge of paint, and that's the colour you're going to get. Here it's like getting you know, sort of toffee and chocolate wrappers. There's very thin colour things that you get sometimes around toffees and things like that, and sort of placing them over a light. So the paper is the light source, and that's flowing, shining through these kind of clear, transparent washes that you place on top of it. So the light is always coming from the paper, and you must kind of remember that. So you're not painting with dark paint, you're painting with thin, transparent washes, and that's the kind of the beauty and the loveliness of watercolor, that kind of makes it vibrant in a way that oil paint just isn't. You know, sort of, I think a really great watercolor painting is just alive in a way. In a way that oil and acrylics just don't quite get that thing, that life somehow. And especially I always find oil paints, the more you come up close to them and this kind of trick, optical trick that the artist has done, it kind of disappoints with the closer you get to it, whereas watercolour still has this amazing capacity to glow. Alright, what do we got? So I'm going to put a little bit of darkness down there, and then we just got lots of kind of splodges, but we want to be getting them in this, again, this sort of pumpkin kind of pattern. So I'm using kind of Van Dyke brown here for all these. Let's have a look at all this stuff that's going on around here. And I'm hoping at some point, when I think I'm going to put some shadow underneath it, that it's going to suddenly kind of spring to life. And I hope you're shouting at the screen, "Oh, but it's coming to life already, it's great." I'm not convinced by this yet. It's a really nice red I've managed to get on there. Let's see what happens. What I'm going to do is I'm just slightly squeezing the brush, and I'm painting some just clear water around the outside of where I want to have this shadow. And I'm using a colour here called Neutral Tint. It doesn't come with this set. I add two extra things basically, Neutral Tint and Naples Yellow, which you can only get in the Winsor & Newton Professional range, so they're a bit more expensive. You could use Payne's Grey instead of Neutral Tint, but I just like Neutral Tint. It's not black, it's not blue, it's not kind of grey, it's neutral. So now I'm kind of bringing these in to where that water is, and I'm allowing that then to kind of softly, mushy meld into there. And have a bit more. And then I'm going to add a bit more in there, like that. Now there's all sorts of techniques that you can use in watercolour, all sorts of interesting techniques, and the more you play with it, the better you get at them, and you find a technique you like and you go, whoa, yes, and you kind of use that. And I know I'm desperately thinking about these little spots on here which I got a wax pencil here. I could have kind of put wax pencil marks there beforehand, but I didn't want to do that. And generally I don't like to use white watercolor paint or black. I don't use black at all, but sometimes you might need to use a little touch of white to. I'm just trying to bring this up a bit like that. So sometimes you might use a bit of white just to kind of bring up a highlight. Ideally with watercolor you want to leave the white of the page, because painting white on the top is never the same. If you can get your highlight and leave bits of the page, of the paper to shine through, that's where the life comes. Where if you kind of paint white on the top, it's just not quite the same. So how are we doing here? I'm thinking I need a little bit more kind of greeniness actually in there, kind of. So I'll bring that in. I hope this is looking all right. This is not what I normally do, but I just kind of felt like having a go today. So I'm going to have a bit more this dark red, and I'm going to add a little bit of sort of bluey purplyness into there to get that much darker. So this isn't That's actually more sort of purple rather than red, but it's getting that darkness. And bring that in around there. And then I keep cleaning the brush. I'm just doing a quick little flick to clean the brush as I bring this over the top. I feel like I'm trying to curve it around like that. And again, I think, can you see here? That's where I dropped a blodge of water there, so it's kind of really spread that out there. And that's too dark, so I need a bit more. Oh, red. I'm just about to do the same thing as splodge of water. So I'm going to bring some really quite dark red in around the edge here, which is, it's not dark red, it's purple really, isn't it? And I'm going to bring that in there, and then I'm cleaning the brush so that I can kind of fade it, and again, and now flick it up like that. I think I still need a bit more. And we need to get this flicking up like that. And drop more red in there, and then we want to, again, we're bringing this, so I'm really using the, I'm painting this quite dry so that the brush strokes kind of get in there. And then what I want to do is just take away a bit of colour here, so I'm adding some bit of white, a bit of clear water, and then I'm just going to try and just take a bit of the darkness out of there, so that this side of the stalk will stand out a bit more, and then I can just kind of move that around there, and then I think I'm going to need a bit more on this stalk. So I got a bit of green, a bit of yellow, but to make it darker I'm adding this kind of purple. So I'm mixing in all these kind of things, and then I want to get this to a nice point. And then down here I'm going to bring that up there and around the top, and I'm cleaning the brush and just going to kind of fade that in and across there like that. And I think something's not quite right there, is it? So I think I've got to bring that out. That's not quite. Need a bit more liquid. It's a bit too dry at the moment, this brush. So I need to very gently squeeze to get a little bit of liquid. That's a bit too much. And a bit more readiness in there. Okay, and I'm just twisting it around to get a point on the brush. And then I'm coming around here, and I want it to kind of blend in as well. Going gently around there. So I want that quite dark there, but I really want this to blend into the paleness there. And now I'm kind of flicking it around in this kind of pumpkin pattern. Pumpkin's the best word I can think of to describe this pattern. Oh, that's probably got a bit too much around there. And so we're just going to kind of go around like that. I can just hear a little thud on the ground outside as another apple drops onto the ground. There's so many apples on there, they're just falling all the time now. I'm going to do a bit more of this down here to get a really good edge there, and then I'm going to fade it. So I keep cleaning the brush as I go along, and then that just kind of fades it out like that, and then we can just go around the outside and use that nice fade that we got earlier like that. And maybe we need a little bit more in there, I think. Oh, sharpen up the point, bring that out there, and coming around there. Now I'm going to get my hairdryer and I'm going to dry this. Now that's interesting because here this is dried out quite pale and I want that to be much darker. So I'm going to get a bit more red, a little bit of that blue in there, and then I'm going to paint over the top again like that. So this is wet on dry painting, and you won't get that kind of, oh, that wasn't good, is it? Because I'm talking, you see. So you won't get that soft sort of fading in. You're going to get kind of one colour on top of another, like you're getting one toffee wrapper just sitting on top of another, or kind of light gels. If you've ever been in the theatre world, you get these gels that you stick on front of lighting systems, and you know, to change the colours. So it's very much like that. Okay, this is thickening up nicely. This is looking much better in the camera, and we're going to go like that. So I think it's round here. This is where it's all just a little bit kind of not quite right yet. So I think we need something a bit more orangey here. Oh no, that's not. So let's have a bit more, kind of bit of yellow, just a bit more orangey in there, I think. I'm just going to dry this again, and then you can see down in the corner here I've got this little bit of white from a tube. I think I splodged on there once, but that's not terribly nice. If I clean that up, so there's a little bit of white paint which I'm now going to use. So I'm going to clean that up. So like I said, I don't really like using white paint, but I think what I've got to do is, so I'm going to get some yellow and I'm going to mix it in with this white, so that's going to kind of thicken it up. And what we have all these little spots all over the apple, and I know there are all sorts of fantastic techniques you can use with salt and things like that to kind of get that kind of speckly kind of style, but I've never really used that, so I'm not about to start trying that now because it's such a specialized technique. I'm sure you'll find people on YouTube showing you how to use salt to make little spots and things. Maybe I'll have a go at it myself and learn. You never learn never too old to learn a new trick like that. So I think I'll maybe have a few more in there, and I think some of them need to be lightened up. So I think in the dark areas I think we need to kind of lighten up these little spots. So in the kind of the dark areas, then definitely they need to be kind of brought out a bit more like that. And we might have a bit around there, but they're not just that kind of colour, because so some of them have got kind of little dots in the middle of them as well, and some of them are actually, that's a bit too dark. Some of these spots are actually quite dark, so you can do some darker ones in the where you've got lighter patches of colour. And then I'll come back to that in a moment. So yeah, so some of these lighter patches have got little bits of kind of dark within them, and then I think I just need to kind of a bit more Van Dyke brown, and I think we just need a bit more kind of this kind of russet kind of stuff going on around here. And we can use that also to help us get this clean the brush, clean the brush, clean the brush. We can help use that to get this curvature thing going on here again. This sort of shape. Squeeze that brush. Get it flowing. And I think this water brush is like any other brush, any other technique. It's just a question of practice. And the more you work with a brush, the more you get to understand it, and the more it becomes like a partnership between you and the brush. You understand it, and it kind of gets to know what you want it to do, until in the end you kind of just do it, and then it'll go out of shape. There is a fantastic moment with a brush when it's just right, and you've just got to understand exactly how it works, and it's just, I don't know, it's lost a few hairs and it's just at the right springiness or something, and then suddenly it's all over, and then it's time to get a new brush and you have to work your way into that. But you'll probably find all the greats like Picasso and everything had a really favourite brush, and their really great period was when that brush was just in absolute tip-top condition and just working with them perfectly, and then it all goes wrong, and then they go from the red period to the blue period because they're using a different brush and they run out of one colour paint. So there we go. I think I am now going to call that it. I think I'm just not quite sure about down here. I'm looking in the camera now, so I think I just wanted to sharpen it up a bit there. Cleaning my brush, and then kind of adding clean water to just sort of blend it in a bit around there like that. I think I'm just going to add a little bit of kind of drawing. So I want to get this brush really, really point sharp. So I'm making sure I've got to add a bit more water into there. Oh, and I'm going to twizzle it around so that it's got a nice and sharp point. And I want to have this with a more sort of sharp edge on the stalk there. So it's not actually like this. I'm having a bit of artistic license on this here now, and I think I got it a bit too dark, so I want to kind of wash out some of that there. Okay, so I'm going to scan this and I'm going to put this onto Patreon with all those other things. If you need some help, come and join me on Patreon, and you can help support this channel, and you get so much more on Patreon. I've got great plans for things coming up soon. I'll be letting you know about those soon. So thank you very much for watching. Go and find yourself an apple, have a go, maybe have a go at drawing this one, and in the meantime, keep drawing, practice, and I'll see you next time. You take care now. Bye bye.